Welcome to the Modern Husbands Podcast, where any combination of Dr. Bruce Ross, Christian Sherrill, and Brian Page host national experts who share winning ideas to manage money and the home as a team. I'm Brian Page, founder of Modern Husbands. Sometimes our listeners want more support than a podcast can give, individual or couple support, which I now provide. Details can be found at modernhusbands.com, or you can email me at brian@modernhusbands.com. For today's podcast, we welcome Dr. Cassie Holmes, a chaired professor at UCLA's Anderson School of Management, award-winning teacher and researcher on time and happiness, and best-selling author of Happier Hour, How to Beat Distraction, Expand Your Time, and Focus on What Matters Most. Today, we're going to discuss how busy dual-career couples can make the most of their time and find more happiness in their lives. Enjoy the show. As you can tell from the intro, Dr. Cassie Holmes is a world expert in understanding how we can bring more happiness and joy to the hours that we spend in our days. And I'm especially excited that she's here. It feels like I'm meeting a superstar. This has personal meaning because I read her book, Happier Hour, when I was on a great vacation with my wife this summer. And I remember the book so fondly. I took an incredible amount of notes. And if you look at my book, and you'll see earmarks or book earmarks everywhere and Post-it notes everywhere. And I can assure you, listeners, you're going to gain a lot from this. If you're like us, where you're married and you're always busy, and you both are trying to find a way to make the hours most meaningful in your lives. Dr. Holmes, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and it's so rewarding to hear that the book was impactful, having spent a whole lot of time working on it. I'm happy to hear that it was worthwhile and that it's helping folks.
Well, I know that you're not just an academic expert, because like you or like us, you have to manage a busy work and home life schedule. So just to provide some context for our listeners, can you share a little bit about your work and your family?
Yeah, so I am I I work a lot. So I'm a professor, and when and a tenure track professor, which means that there was like a lot of working towards these promotions, and you have to establish yourself as, the primary researcher in a particular field, while at the same time doing research, teaching to MBAs who are a demanding and wonderful audience. And of course, not of course. And I have a partner. My husband is wonderful. And he also he is very accomplished and works a whole lot himself. And we have 2 young kids. And all of that is, contributes to what I describe and what I do research on is this sense of time poverty, this acute feeling of having too much to do and not enough time to do it. And it is a serious issue that I absolutely have struggled with. As I'm a time and happiness researcher, it's sort of ironic that for my own happiness, time was the biggest barrier. And that is actually what perpetuated and really set my research agenda at a certain point once I had my first little baby. And I'm like, holy moly, this does not seem sustainable. And despite having a career that I loved and had worked so hard in sort of developing, I, at that point of having a little one with my husband working, I was like, there's no way, like something's got to give. And we can talk about that because I did ultimately look at that question and empirically look at the question is, if people had a whole lot more time, would they be happier? And I sort of open the book sharing my feeling of like, oh my gosh, maybe I do have to quit. And ultimately I didn't. But there's a lot that goes into thinking about, not only thinking about, but since I've tested how do we invest our time so that it's not the biggest barrier to our happiness, and instead it can actually be the solution?
Well, I got to say, as a fellow professor who's now recently an associate professor, just went through the whole tenure process and got tenure, I can
Congratulations.
fully attest the amount of work, effort, stress, time that it does take. So,
Yeah.
and I do love when we can, as a fellow researcher, put in like those life influences into our work. Like it informs, like life informs our research and vice versa. Right. So,
Yeah.
like getting into it, then let's talk about what inspired you to really write Happy Hour a little bit more.
Yeah. So I will say, no offense to us academics, we do this research that we get published in academic journals, and that helps us professionally in our
Yep.
careers, but nobody reads these things. And I
Well,
was
other academics do. It's a
other
fishbowl, right?
other academics do, but I was sort of struck that there's actually, in this question of how should we be making decisions to improve our lives, to improve our well-being, our sense of satisfaction, our happiness, avoiding regret, there's actually a lot of information in research. It's just that hasn't been disseminated to a broader audience. And so now, I think it was like 6 years ago, 7 years ago at this point, I had, I'm a professor in a business school and I am in a marketing area. And so traditionally, while I've always researched happiness and time, I used to teach brand management, more traditional marketing courses. But then I got to a point where I'm like, I want to invest my time and develop and teach a course that I think will actually help people, not just in their professional lives, but in their lives more broadly. And so I approached our administration and I'm like, I want to teach a course on happiness. And they're like, what? We're a business school. And then
Why
I
do
like,
MBAs need to know about
yeah.
happiness?
And then I came back with my data, of course, as a researcher should do. And I'm like, this is important because we want to train our MBAs not just to have the tools to get the job. We want them to have the tools to thrive throughout their careers. And that requires thriving both personally and professionally. And there's research that shows that happy employees are more engaged, they're better performers, when we're happier, we're more creative, we're more adaptive in our problem solving. And then there's also work that shows it helps us in our interpersonal relationships. When we feel happier, we like others more, we're liked by others more, we're nicer. And that helps not only our colleagues, but it also helps, our friends, our families. And then there's plenty of work that shows that there's a really positive link between emotional well-being and physical well-being. So it also helps us with respect to health. So all of this led the administration to be like, all right, go ahead, do this, give it a shot, and we'll see how it goes. And so I developed this course that I call Applying the Science of Happiness to Life Design. And I have now, it did go well. And it was so rewarding because I could see, and my students shared with me the effects over the course of the quarter. So I share with them the research, and actually it's also more experiential, just like the book. So this is all, it is answering your question, why the book? Because I saw and heard the impact on my students of applying these empirically based insights, going through these exercises, and seeing how it affected them in their lives, like during the weeks of the course, but also hearing from my students who've taken it a couple of years ago, sharing back of like, oh my gosh, that course like has changed the course of their lives. And so I wanted not just the folks who had the opportunity to sit in my class, but these research empirically based findings can help a broader audience. And so that it's not just fellow academics who know about the research and can make these informed decisions, but a broader audience can. And Brian, I'm so happy that the book found you and that it sort of helped helped you, or perhaps in some of your decision making.
I have to say, I loved it so much. I wrote about it twice on our website as well, modernhusbands.com. If you're interested, just put it in the search engine. I have some of my favorite lessons, activities from the book. And then I did obviously a really great book review of Happier Hour. So yeah.
Brian, let me ask you a question. What is your favorite activity from the book?
Probably, well, I mean, you look at, so there's two things to consider. Like first is like kind of the philosophical approach, right? And recognizing that we have to prioritize our time and we have to be intentional about our time. And then the second is just like the actual, the mechanics of it, kind of the more utilitarian. So I would say time blocking is more, better for me. And I found that like in my work, if I do work in chunks of 90 minutes, and then walk away, I'm far more, and then go back to work. Obviously, I'm not a 90-minute work hour day, 90-minute work day. But anyhow, yeah, I just feel like I get the most out of my time that way. I need to be. I know I'm probably being a little harder on myself, but the one thing that I have not done well enough is exercised at the right time of the day. So I want to find ways to exercise earlier in the day, and it's all about the motivation to do so. So anyway.
Wait, that's so great to hear, because the practical thing absolutely stems directly from what you said was the sort of more impactful thing of the sort of mindset shift of recognizing how valuable our time really is. And unless you are intentional and you prioritize and protect time for the things that matter, they won't happen. Life happens, like all these other things that we're reacting to, responding to other people's requests and demands, and we become much more reactive in how we spend our time rather than proactive. And so it's so fabulous that you're using time blocking to be like, okay. And honestly, I know we do work more than 90 minutes a day, but if you get a 90-minute, like, real work done where it is protected, removing the distractions, you can be actually a whole lot more productive than had you worked like an 8-hour day without being intentional about it. So
That's
I'll
right.
just say it is about quality rather than quantity of time spent.
Very true. So, I mean, speaking of time, then how does the way we spend our time really impact our overall happiness? I mean, especially though with couples juggling dual careers.
Yeah. With the couples juggling dual careers, this is such an important audience to talk to, not only because I feel like I'm talking to myself, but because the research shows that when we looked at who is it that's most susceptible to feelings of time poverty, we actually, this is since writing the book, we conducted a survey among a nationally representative sample of Americans to see who is most prone to feeling time poor. And what we found is that actually women tend to feel more time poor than men, which is interesting. And actually that effect is even sort of bigger among men and women who are not working, which suggests that women have sources of time pressure that fall outside of work, whereas men tend to, their sort of sense of time pressure comes from work. People with young kids, and interestingly, it's like there's this stepwise where if you have kids under the age of 4, most time poor. Then you have kids that are still in the home, you still feel time poor. What's really interesting is empty nesters actually feel they almost fall into like a too much time bucket. They feel like they have more time than even people who never had kids or don't have kids at all, which shows that, you know, when I talk about time poverty, that feeling of having too much to do, it's absolutely subjective and perceptual. And so when you sort of, we've invested, you know, so much time and care and thought into our kids, and then they leave the house, and then it's like, oh, now what? Work, of course, is a great source. People who work full time, particularly if you have a partner who works as well. So all of this is pointing to the fact that parents who work full time with a partner who's working full time, especially if you have young kids, that is the most sort of group that is most extremely susceptible to feeling time poor. And this is
makes sense.
Yeah, it is. It does make sense. It was very validating. It was like,
I'm sure. Yeah.
like, no wonder I feel so crazy, because especially in that story that I share in opening the book of having a little one under the age of 4. Now my kids are 9 and 12, which is such a different space than what I call the dark years, when we're like babies and toddlers.
The dark ages.
Yeah, which I sort of barely remember. I know that I survived them. But all to say that this is a group, your listeners, who are particularly susceptible to it. And it's an issue because it makes us, when we feel time poor, it has these negative consequences. It makes us less healthy, Brian, as you said. Like, exercise is one of those things. Exercise is something that we are very quick to neglect when we don't feel like we have enough time. But the effects of exercise on not only our physical well-being, but our emotional well-being are really dramatic. And not only does it affect how we feel while we're exercising, like it gives us, you know, that sort of sense of like self-esteem, and and those endorphins are going. And if you're exercising outside, then you also have the benefit of being outside. Or if you're exercising with others, you have that social benefit. But not only does it affect how you feel in the moment, but it also has these carryover effects influencing your mood and your subsequent activities. So all to say, how we spend our time is really critical. But, and I should wait to hear what your questions are, but I'm like, but I will also say that while that sense of not having enough time can be very detrimental, increased feelings of stress, lower sense of happiness and joy, it's not so dire, because there are ways in it. Actually, saying what I said before, it's about quality of time that we spend, not the quantity. There are ways, even for those of us who are working full time, have a partner working full time with young kids, where we can absolutely become really intentional with how we spend our time and sort of pull out those pockets of joy in our weeks. And those little pockets of joy and sense of, you know, when I was saying your 90-minute, like if you get a really major 90 minutes in of getting, like, you can, you know, the rest of the day, it's like, fine, like, sure, I'll respond to emails, sure, I'll, you know, do groceries, whatever, but I accomplished something. And that sense of satisfaction, even though our schedules are full, we feel fulfilled.
But I think my pressure, my own pressure after reading your book, is not just applying that to my work life, but also to my personal life. So, you know, I love pickleball. I play 6 to 10 hours a week. That's I kind of lump that into a social activity. I mean, that's not really exercise. It's a little bit of exercise, but, you know, kind of like you're saying, hey, if you sit down, you block out 90 minutes, you're not distracted, you're just laser focused, cranking through it. I apply the same logic to working out. And if for now I'm in my mid 40s, so that 90 minutes is 60, but for like 60 minutes, if I can really crank a workout, then it's like playing 5 hours of pickleball. Right. And I that's like one of the things that I have to figure out is like, how can I do my time blocking? Right. It's not figured out. It's the motivation. My time blocking for work, my time blocking for family, my time blocking for exercise, and making the most out of each day. And I don't remember if it's from your book or if it's something that dawned on me while reading your book. But I remember somebody posing the question of who would you rather be? Warren Buffett, worth $100 billion or whatever he's worth now, knowing that Warren Buffett's, I think, 96, or would you rather be yourself right now? And I remember like asking that question also in class to my students years ago. And it dawned on them that maybe money is not what's most important. It's not our most valuable resource.
Mhm.
It's time, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And to that point of the time blocking of having it extend not just in your professional life, but also your personal life, absolutely. And that's actually what I think is perhaps the most powerful for us parents of, well, also sort of managing a career of how do we really sort of dedicate and invest and truly show up for the times that we are with our kids or that we are with our
right.
partner. And you can make, even if it's like a half hour, if you are so there and present and joyful, that half hour can totally determine a relationship, you know? And so really being like intentional around blocking the time that we are with the people that we love so much so that they get the best of us. And so that, and it's okay then for the other times that you're not with them, that doesn't undermine your relationship or you know how good a parent
Mhm.
you are because you have fully shown up and blocked the time and you know phones away. That like
Mhm.
for me the thing that I've actually and I will actually I'm saying for me the thing I've noticed has
Yeah.
been very helpful for my husband and for those of us around him is like not only the phone is away but he sort of is like okay, this is my time that I'm here and not thinking about like, oh, getting back online and responding to an email of
Right.
like sort of moving through it so that they can get, you know, he can get back to work. It's really like, oh no, this is time where I'm like mentally present and sort of joyful and not having that stress and weighing because all of you know everyone feels it when he's thinking about work and so it's like time blocking but also sort of you know mental blocking and protection.
That is an
Yeah.
essential point to make with so many of us working from home or having a hybrid work environment where it's right
Yeah,
there. Whether maybe even it's not the office right around the other side of the living room, maybe it's the fact that our offices are oftentimes just in our phones, you know,
yeah.
emails, whatever.
Mhm.
Listeners have told us that they love the ideas we share on our podcast to manage money in the home as a team, but want more help than one episode can provide. That's why I'm excited to announce On the Same Page Consulting for corporations, couples, and individuals. Visit modernhusbands.com and click Our Services at the top of the page to learn more about how I can help you or your employees manage money in the home as a team. Again, that's modernhusbands.com. Now back to the show.
So before you mentioned kind of these little pockets of joy, can you expand a little bit upon that and like what are the experiences or these pockets that really contribute most to our happiness?
Yeah. So one thing I do recommend people do, I was curious whether Brian, you would identify this as the exercise, because often people say that the time tracking
Mhm.
exercise is so helpful because what it is over the course of a week, writing down what you're doing sort of as you come out, like for each half hour, but as importantly, rating on a 10-point scale how you felt coming out of it. And it's almost like your own little data collection. And sometimes there are these surprises of like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, A, that I was spending that much time on X, but also that I felt such joy for these little sort of unexpected, often very mundane moments. And even if you don't track your time for the week, just reflecting back over the last couple of weeks and ask yourself, what were those moments where I felt the most joy? And notably, or notice that I'm not asking what are things that you enjoy doing, where people sort of pull from their beliefs. This is having you reflect back on your own experience. And then what people often identify are there these like really simple moments of, maybe for me, my coffee date with my daughter, or going for a walk around the block with your dog and partner, or like sort of tucking your little one into bed. It's like these very mundane things, or even like having breakfast. It's these little things that sort of show up, these simple joys and pleasures, but they only show up as joyful if we notice them. And so, there's our psychological tendency towards hedonic adaptation, that we get used to things over time. So when you do the same thing again and again, it stops having as intense of an emotional impact on you. Now, it's good that we're adaptive in the face of negative experiences, because it makes us resilient, and get through sort of tough situations. But the fact that, that walk around the block, or tucking your little one into bed, or, breakfast with, the sun coming through the window, they're so ordinary that it's very easy, because of hedonic adaptation, to not notice them. They've just become part of the fabric of our lives, as opposed to these little sort of glittery bits of our lives. And so, to the extent that we continue to recognize them and have the impact that, or allow them to have the impact that they can potentially have, there's a few ways towards this. One is actually going back to the preciousness of time, is realizing how limited our time ultimately is. Because just because that activity is sort of part of your everyday now, it's not going to continue to happen every day, and certainly not like it does now, right? So tucking your little one into bed, that's actually a very limited sort of thing. Once your kids get to an age where my son is like, I'll turn out the light, Mom, don't worry about me. I'm like, wait, what about that moment, or my coffee dates with my daughter. Now her schedule is so busy, and she'd like rather hang out with her friends. I mean, not quite yet, but what was a weekly thing is now I have to negotiate it into our schedules. So all to say, recognizing the preciousness of it, also finding variation even in those times. There's interesting, as you have couples, there's interesting work that shows that couples who continue to do have novel experiences together, they report greater relationship satisfaction. So the reason is because it helps offset hedonic adaptation. That is, like, instead of, moving through your experience, next to your partner, then it's actually, you're doing something new. So not only are you experiencing something new, but you sort of see your partner experiencing something new, and you have something new to, like, engage around. So, think about what novel experiences, you can do. And again, quality of time is not like versus quantity. It's not like now every night you and your partner have to go do something new. It's like, oh, maybe every other week you guys find something that's sort of fun to do together, a restaurant you haven't been to, or maybe a show where, like, I subjected when I was reading this particular research. I'm like, all right, Rob, we're going to go do like pottery painting. He's like,
Yeah.
and it was so fun. So just finding those novel things to do together, so that we sort of continue to see our partner in sort of novel experiences and new light.
I started to do the time tracking exercise. So again, for our listeners, you're essentially assessing a value to the time that you spend for the day. But I don't remember if in the book you said to do this with work, but my value was productivity for my work. But one of the things that I didn't do it for very long, because I started to get really frustrated with myself, because I realized how much time I had wasted, right? I neglected to be laser focused on living in the moment, particularly when I was not working. And, I realized at that point, how important, all of these moments are. And I also remember you talking about changing up those experiences. So like an example, and we all know, if you're in the money world, like it's all about experiences. That makes us far more happy than possessions. But, I feel like the holiday season is like one of the things that naturally creeps up on us and gives us the opportunity to do something different. Go see Christmas lights. We're going to downtown Sonoya, and there's this like a festival down there. Like, and these things are more common during the Christmas time. And I don't know if this is true or not. It just feels like because those things are more readily available, that we naturally do them because they're easier, and those as a result give us more joy. But I'm a big believer in what you said. I mean, we did paint by number at one of these places. Like, and I'm thinking, and in my mind, I'm like, oh man, I don't know about this. And it was great. We still hang the paintings up at Christmas time.
That's great. Yeah. And the holidays are a tremendous time to sort of engage in these really intentional and joyful ways. There's research that shows that families who have shared holiday traditions are more likely to gather for the holidays, and they enjoy the holidays more. So it's interesting because it sounds like it's on the face of what I was saying about new experiences of doing something that's traditional. But what's neat about these shared holiday traditions is that it's like that's what we do, right? It's like
Right.
you and the people that share it. So it's sort of ours, and then you can look forward to it next year, and it sort of connects us over time. And since they don't happen, it's like once a year that these types of things are sort of available to us. But the holidays are a wonderful time. It's a wonderful opportunity, but also being fully aware that when we talk about time poverty, that it's a really busy time. And particularly moms tend to absorb it's not a burden, but the responsibility of almost like creating the holidays, and creating the magic, which takes time, but it's worth the investment time. So maybe for that partnership of like assigning, like coming up with different activities that you all do together. And it also helps sort of manage the burden of the shopping list of things that it gets you to invest in your time.
What are your suggestions for prioritizing our time and our energy with intention?
Yeah. Well, I think it is fully taking on the responsibility of prioritizing your time, because other people aren't going to do it for you, I will also say. But also, yes, we cannot do everything right now in any moment, and if we're like, oh, we have to, optimize every hour, that creates sense of stress and conflict and tension. And what I suggest is that actually people sort of step back and take a broader perspective of their time, even thinking about the week overall as what you're sort of not managing, but optimizing of, okay, when in the week am I going to sort of invest in, Brian used the term time blocking, this is exactly what it is. And it's like the second to last chapter of the book, because it's like pulling all of these insights together of how do you actually design an ideal week so that you are making sure that, the time that you want to really show up and invest with a particular kid or your partner, or exercise, is carved out and protected within your schedule. Also, those times that you really want that sort of deep thinking work, that is carved out and protected in your schedule. And which days, and ideally you're sort of putting them into a place within your week where you have the sort of most energy, or the sort of best fitting energy and mind space for that particular type of activity. And then sort of stepping back even further of like, okay, even if a given week is going to be sort of absorbed by one priority, when you look at your month, maybe there are other sort of pockets for you to invest in these other priorities. And then if you like step back even further and looking over the course of your year or years, we have found in our research that people who take a broader perspective of their time, thinking in terms of years and their life overall instead of minutes and hours and like within the day, those who take the broader perspective of time report greater satisfaction, greater sense of meaning, and greater joy during their days, because that broader perspective highlights what's important to us. And we spend our hours in terms of what's important, not just responding to what's urgent. And so there are, again, the priorities need to come from your own values and your own purpose, because there will be all the things asking of you and pulling from you, and some of them are just not worth the time. And once you recognize the sort of preciousness of the time, that those things might not find their way onto your schedule. So learning how to say no, learning how not to feel guilty by having an inbox that has many unread messages. Because ultimately, if it's a question of responding to each email versus being able to sort of fully show up for your kid at that point in the week where they need you and you want to be with them, that's the trade-off, that it's having the confidence to prioritize and sort of, follow through.
I found time blocking was particularly helpful with email management.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I'm one of these OCD guys where I don't want to see any emails in my inbox. So that's an internal battle. All right. We're going to do a rapid fire session. So I'm going to ask you a question, and then Bruce is going to ask you a question. We're going to go back and forth. And
oh my God.
You can take a breath, and I can, if you want to just take a few moments and really think through the answer when you respond, that's okay. But I want, if you wouldn't mind, think about how you can respond in a way where in less than 60 seconds, the listeners are like, I got it. I can do this in my life. Okay. Are you ready? No pressure. Are you ready?
No pressure.
Total pressure. Let's bring it.
Okay. What is one specific time-related habit or routine that consistently boosts happiness for couples?
A shared ritual. So think about whether it is your coffee that you share in the morning, or breakfast, or for my husband and I, it's walking the dog around the block. So shared rituals, but make it a ritual, not a routine.
What's the difference?
Ritual, you even give it a name, make it special. It's like, our walk that we do together instead of having to take the dog for a walk. Or,
I love it.
So give it a name.
Love it. All right. What's one common time trap that busy couples fall into, and how can you avoid it?
The time trap is that they forget to spend time together, and that it's all logistical, that they get pulled towards their other responsibilities and responding to the kids without carving out and time for you to turn and focus on each other. So yeah.
And how do we avoid it?
As Brian's time blocking, I would say carve out time in the week for little dates, whether it's a walking the dog date, a Friday night dinner date, a coffee ritual coffee date. Actually, even just calling your coffee, having coffee in the morning together, a date, because what that does is it sort of frames that space out as it's about you guys being together.
What is your favorite strategy for how busy couples can create meaningful moments together, even if they only have limited time?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the same answer, is
many dates.
Protecting time for the dates.
Yeah.
All right. And then what's one small change listeners can implement immediately to create a happier schedule? What can they
Um,
immediately do now?
yeah. So look back on the last 2 weeks, identify the thing that made them happiest, and in the next 2 weeks, put it in your schedule of when you're going to do that.
What is one piece of simple and actionable advice you would like to leave our listeners with?
It's I don't know if it's actionable, but it can turn into action, is recognizing for all of us, those of us who are time poor, the answer isn't about having more time available. It's really how we invest the time that we do have. And it's really about intentionality of protecting time for the things that matter, but as importantly, when you're spending time on those things that matter, of paying attention. Don't miss out on those simple joys that are right there in the time that we're already spending.
And where can our listeners go to learn more about you and purchase the book Happier Hour?
Hopefully they can purchase the book anywhere. they will find it. And I will also say there's the audio version. So for the busy ones of us, you can listen to it while driving around or while exercising. And you can learn about me on my website is actually sort of where my research is, CassieMHolmes.com. And I'm not really on social media because I found it doesn't make me happy. So I'm on LinkedIn though. There you go.
Dr. Holmes, this was wonderful. I'm so happy that you made the time to meet with us today.
Yes,
made my month.
absolutely.
This was great.
Oh, well, thank you both so much for having me. And it was a treat to chat with you. Yeah, and I appreciate it.
Don't leave just yet. Be sure to like and subscribe before you do. And a reminder to visit modernhusbands.com if you're looking for money and home management support in your life. Just click the Our Services button at the top of the page. Again, that's at modernhusbands.com. And many thanks to our co-hosts, our guests, and of course, all of you for joining today.